welcome back to Rickard. I'm your host, Anthony Totera. Stay tuned at 8:30. We'll talk with Steve Milton of the Hamilton Spectator, and we'll talk for the remainder of the show about CPL, the comings and goings, the rumors out there, and I've got some information that I am going to share as well with Steve. But right now, we're going to talk about a special story that unfolded last night, and it was a beautiful story, and we'll talk with Charles Boehm of 442. Charles, welcome, my friend.
Hey, always a pleasure to be on with you.
Thank you so much. Charles, let's talk about it. Christos FC, the last amateur team in the U.S. Open Cup competition last night. I got goosebumps talking about this. This is why I love watching the game, being part of it, and enjoying every part of it. It's stories like this. Here's a small club. You know the history. I want you to tell the history. They open up the score sheet, getting the first one. And I watched the highlights of those fans running down the hill, embracing the players and going crazy. It brought a tear almost to my eye. And then watching at the end to hear some of these players with their kids in their hands talk about it. I love this, Charles. Talk about it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. You know, we have a great tradition that's often slept on here in the United States with the U.S. Open Cup. It's over a century old. There's amazing stories like this, maybe not quite to this extent every year, but there's always Cinderellas and upsets, and Christos is an amazing story. It started as a bunch of guys who played together in high school and college, getting back together as adults and wanting to play a little bit, and it grew into a culture from there. It's been, 20 years or so now, I think, or close to it, that they've been together. They never train. They drink beer together more often than they train, but there's some real ballers. There's a lot of them that came through a very strong NCAA Division I program just outside of Baltimore at UMBC, University of Maryland, Baltimore County. Again, some of these guys have been playing together since they were children, 8, 9, 10 years old, and so you have what we have up the road from me. I'm in DC, and Baltimore is a really deep-rooted soccer culture. From ethnic enclave to the high school scene and everything. And these guys sort of captured lightning in a bottle with connecting with their fans, and a lot of their friends and family came out, and it was a big crowd, almost a sellout at the Soccerplex out in Germantown, Maryland. About 3 times the size of the crowd that DC United got for their Open Cup game at this time last year. And it was majority Christos fans, people just proud of a bunch of guys, amateurs that are representing their city and their communities, and they hung with it. They got an early lead. They didn't give up the go-ahead goal to DC United until the 85th minute. So the final score worked out to be a little bit gaudy in DC's favor, but it was a tight game right to the end, despite enormous advantages in terms of their fitness and their training and preparation. So just a really fun Cinderella story.
Charles, I would have loved to have been in the locker room, 1-1, and listen to the speech of the coach and to hear some of the players talk. I mean, it would have been something special to say, boys, we can make history here. Boys, we're going up against some of the guys that are getting big-time money in MLS, and we're going toe-to-toe. It must have been an amazing halftime. It's 1-1. They're playing full out, toe-to-toe, and then we know that the last, I would say, 15 to 20 minutes, the physical aspect really took over, and DC dominated in the last 20. But in halftime, these guys must have been thinking to themselves, we got a shot here.
Yeah, and DC has the advantage of they started several reserves, but then could bring starters off the bench, and in the end, the winning goal was scored by Lloyd Sam, a Ghanaian international with big-time experience who can come off with fresh legs and make something happen. So it was. I give these guys credit just for the attitude they had. They got profiled by a bunch of different media outlets here in the area, and in one of them, the Washington Post, these guys were basically saying, had shown no fear. Somebody said, asked them what they knew about DC United, and one of them said, "Well, I know they're in last place." It's pretty amazing the swagger these guys had, considering their, they work at 9-to-5 jobs, most of them, and nobody gave them any kind of a shot, but they more than held their own, and it was. I was there in person, and it was really fun to be a part of.
And you know what's great, Charles? If I understand the story, a lot of these guys coach younger kids, and this is a story that they can never, ever forget, and some of them were watching their coaches play. This is unbelievable.
Mm-hmm. It's true, and the fans that were out there some of them were supporting friends and family, some of them were supporting their coaches. You know, they were signing autographs. These guys are signing autographs after the game, which is pretty wild. But and I think honestly, I'm going to be keeping an eye on some of these names because we may see some of these guys. You know, it's all a question of commitment, and there's some of them I think still do have pro dreams. The goalkeeper in particular, Phil Saunders, had played in the Icelandic league. Had an injury that kind of interrupted his career there. I think he's looking to get back into things. He's actually been training with DC United. So there's some ex-MLS players that were in the lineup, like a guy named Levi Huapeyu, who was a draft pick at one point and played for the Philly Union. So there's some kids that can ball, and you know it's so often the case. It's not always necessarily the best players that survive in the pros, but it's the ones that get the best luck and stick with it. Some guys just you know, have some bad luck and have decided to call it a day and go get a real job, and that in some cases, you know, still pays more money than a lower league salary.
And you talk about bad luck. The Italian stallion there, Pete Caringi, goes down with an injury, and it looked like he was playing lights out good, and then he goes down, and you could see that, you know, that the team was a little bit lacking offensively after that.
It's true. Caringi was playing in USL and a year ago and had been a super draft pick. You know, definitely had MLS eyes on him. So you know, and it's again, I think you probably have places like this up in Canada too. In Baltimore, there's a real strong sense of home and a strong identity, and guys do get homesick, and maybe they decide they'd rather be back home where they're from than kind of wandering around the country playing and you know, hustling for contracts. And Caringi's departure, he had a hamstring issue, I guess, that couldn't shake off or couldn't quite avoid re-aggravating. He's a big body and a good finisher up top. You know, they were always going to be losing the possession battle, and you know, they just lost a little bit of the cutting edge there. But again, they had their chances. They forced, despite, you know, I think it was 75-25 or so in terms of possession. Christos were right in it to the very end. So really neat story, and they do win $15,000 as the longest surviving amateur side in the tournament. Boy, you know, given how much money our federation has in the bank right now, over $100 million in cash reserves, I'd love to see him, you know, double, triple, quadruple, quintuple that amount, because these guys deserve it.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a story that I think will not be done with. I believe we might get a little small documentary, a little story somewhere down the line where someone wants to, you know, put something together, because I think it would be fantastic. The message I came away with last night also is this, Charles, and I want your thoughts. I'm looking at DC United's lineup, and a lot of, you know, main guys, starters. I mean, you know, Bobby Boswell. We're looking at, you know, Travis Wara, Kofi Opara, Marcelo Sarvis, on and on. They dressed, for the most part, a pretty decent team. But a lot of MLS clubs, even the Canadian ones when they're playing in the Canadian Championship, they dress their second and third string guys, to be honest. And I think one day soon, they're going to regret that, and they're going to be eating some humble pie, because a club like this, Christos FC, almost put the living daylight scare out of MLS and a club like DC. I believe it could happen if they don't smarten up.
It's true, and we had, you know, there's USL teams that have made deep runs like this. What's ironic is the team that Christos defeated to get to this game is the USL team down the road in Richmond, Virginia, the Richmond Kickers. They started out in much the same fashion. Before MLS came into existence, they won an Open Cup as Cinderella story, you know, amateurs. From there, they were able to build a culture and build a club, and now there's a, you know, decades-long tradition of professional soccer in Richmond, and now they're big enough to be considered the Goliath that gets knocked off by the underdog. So it can happen. You can build something, and if you get a little investment, you create a sustainable model. You know, you get guys that can stick around and coach when they're not playing, maybe, and make a little money that way. These things can happen, but yeah, I think MLS teams are always gambling when they field lower division teams or second choice 11s. It's always a tough balancing act for coaches when you get into fixture congestion, but you know, you're taking a gamble, and sometimes you do get burned.
Let's talk about some of the comments that were made by some of the DC players after the game. Were they shocked the way that first half played out? Were they, you know, surprised, or were they expecting it? Like, give us some of that feedback. Who were some of the players that spoke after the game?
Yeah, you know, Bobby Boswell, the veteran center back, had some good quotes about it. You know, nobody likes to be the Goliath, right? Nobody wants to be the one that's that the little guy, the underdog, is taking aim for, and I'm sure it's not particularly enjoyable to have to crush the Cinderella dreams, but these guys want that result too, and they want to make that run. And DC has won the Open Cup twice in the last 10 years or so, so it does have value to them, generally speaking. But they were saying, they knew that that there was a little bit of a waiting game. They dominated possession and finally wore them down over time. I think it's one of those times, and there was pretty modest celebrating happening for DC United after they scored, because it's a lose-lose situation for the favorite in that position. You've got to kind of just take care of business and try not to dance on Cinderella's grave too much. So I think they realized that you can go and win a trophy here, and you kind of got to wipe the little guy out of the way on your way up.
Charles, really appreciate you making time to join us tonight to talk about this special story, Christos FC. Keep up the great work at 442. I got to tell you, on a side note, they've really grown in leaps and bounds, especially here in North America. A lot of people make that their destination for some great reading. And it's not just yourself, Paul Tenorio as well, and others. It's some great stuff that I enjoy reading. So keep up the great work there, and hopefully more and more good quality work comes out of there, because a lot of people up here in the Toronto area really enjoy it.
Glad to hear that. Glad to hear that.
Charles, thanks again, and keep up the good work, my friend. Have a great night.
You too. Cheers.
That is Charles Boehm of 442. Quick commercial break. In a couple minutes' time, it'll be all CPL talk with Steve Milton of the Hamilton Spectator. Stay tuned right here on Red Card.
Now I've got